Tell me about the civilian troubles you've had with the legal system.
So I guess I started writing my blog in 2013 about cultural, political, defence issues, and one of the issues I'm vehemently in favour of protecting is our law on marriage. It is a good law. I don't think I need to go into too much detail about why marriage between one man and one woman for life is a good thing for children, a good thing for families, a good thing for the nation, essentially.
What I'm really interested in is how the legal system gets used as a weapon.
Sure. So
your experience with it. Because you've had a good victory recently.
Yes.
But tell us from beginning to end, in 5 minutes, the landscape in this story.
And this is how anti-discrimination law is used as a weapon. So because of my writing defending marriage, and because of my writing attacking certain behaviours, for instance, I wrote an article about naked men standing in front of children at the Toronto Gay Pride Parade.
In public. Yep.
In public, so I condemn that. Because of those things, one...
That's not scandalous. I mean, the nudity is scandalous. The criticism, I'm sure it would be shared by at least 95% of Australians.
Well, I only met...
Public nudity in front of children.
I only know one person who disagrees with my view on this, and this is Gary Burns, the person who lodged the complaints against me. Now, he's...
Complaints?
32 complaints.
32 complaints?
Yes. Now, he's a homosexual activist in New South Wales. He calls himself an anti-free speech campaigner, and he uses the anti-discrimination law of New South Wales to terrorise anybody who presents a different political opinion.
So instead of using political campaigning, the democratic systems, standing for a party, lobbying, petitions, he's using the legal system.
Well, he's using special laws for special people, because you have to understand this. In New South Wales, it is free to lodge complaints.
No cost.
No cost. There is no investigation by the board.
You don't need a lawyer?
No.
No administration charge?
No. There's no penalty if your complaint is not upheld. The conciliation process, if it happens, is designed entirely for the favour of the complainants. And at the end of the day, if there's any finding made that the person complained against has made a statement that breaches the law and financial penalties imposed, it goes to the complainant.
The complainant, who doesn't have to pay anything or risk anything to lodge a complaint, gets all the windfall, if any damages.
Sure, and he's
really?
kicker. That's correct.
How much does somebody stand to gain from a career in complaining?
Well, let me just... So every matter that goes to the tribunal can be hit with a fine of up to $100,000. So I was facing, up until about 2 weeks ago, fines of $1.6 million. But I want you to understand this. The only people who can use this law to complain are homosexuals. It is a special law for special people. And because it is a law that is like that, it is wide open to abuse. And so since this law has been implemented, one man is responsible for about 85% of all complaints. He is keeping an entire anti-discrimination board employed, and every year, I bet you they send in...
Sounds like a private police force.
Well, it is. If you gave the Greens a private political police force, it would look like the Australian Human Rights Commission. It would look like the New South Wales Anti-Discrimination Board. It would look like the Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Commission. That is what private political police forces for Greens political parties look like.
From where I'm sitting, this is extremely concerning because it's not being directed against evil, but it's being directed against the views held by the majority of the population, which are the status quo, which are the law of the land, that marriage is between a man and a woman. And if you deviate from this majority view, you're the subject of the persecution.
I think people need to understand this. This was always going to happen. These anti-discrimination laws are entirely about one thing: undermining our Western Christian civilization and promoting any minority group that will do that. They are not... It is no surprise that this occurs. This is the purpose of anti-discrimination
Even
law.
if you didn't agree with that agenda, it's a lucrative career.
Well, for a complainant, it's a gravy train for complainants. That's what it is.
Now, he's complained against you 32 times. How you haven't taken this lying down, I know. That's why we're talking to you today. Speak to the merits of the case. What were you? What grounds were you saying, hey, you haven't got a leg? What were you fighting him on?
Sure. So I was fighting him on a number of things. And the one that got up was our first argument. It was a pretty simple one.
Yeah.
This is a law for New South Wales, and everything that you're complaining about, I have done in Queensland where I live, breathe and operate. And you cannot hold one person in another state. You can't bring them to trial in New South Wales for whatever crazy laws the people there might vote for. And I won on that argument.
Basic jurisdiction.
So the full bench of the Court of Appeal in New South Wales found in my favour on jurisdiction. And what they found was that New South Wales was breaching our nation's constitution so blatantly that they were trying to bring people to trial in New South Wales who never even lived there. I mean, one lady, Tess Corbett, was in the process of facing contempt charges and going to jail because of what was happening in New South Wales. So unconstitutional. People were in the process of heading to jail.
Now, Tess Corbett's case is an interesting tangent, because what I'm aware of is the comments she made were in the process of a political campaign.
That's exactly right.
In a free society, in a democratic society where we want the best idea to win, why on earth would anything be out of bounds in a political campaign? If it's a rubbish idea, you're not going to get elected.
Well, political campaigns are supposed to be about a contest of ideas, and the Greens, we know, and the left wing of the Labor Party, all these left organisations don't want debate.
So again, they're circumventing democracy with a legal system.
They are destroying democracy, but they're destroying our own constitution. But we've won this case. Now, I was disappointed that the court didn't consider our other arguments. These arguments will now be kicked down the road and considered another day. The arguments of freedom of political communication and freedom of religion. And I have no doubt that those arguments will win at the end of the day, and we'll have a court victory that doesn't just say this law is wrong because it breaches the Constitution in relation to jurisdiction, but it is fundamentally wrong because it destroys the very notion of democracy in this nation.
So the highest court in New South Wales found in your favour on grounds of jurisdiction. In your opinion, do you think they passed on considering your other arguments because they were redundant, or because it was politically pragmatic and they didn't want to set any kind of precedent?
Well, look, I'm not going to criticise the courts, and I really mean this. I found when you go to courts, especially the higher up you go, the law is applied. And I thank the judges for doing that, and not just because I won, because I think there's a misconception that there are serious problems with the legal system. But essentially, in terms of jurisdiction,
we want them to decide on the law.
This decision...
We don't want them to reinterpret it.
No, that's exactly right.
We want them to uphold it.
Yeah. But this decision didn't consider those other arguments because the court found that they didn't need to. If jurisdiction is out, it's black and white, you don't need to worry about everything else. But those arguments will come before the High Court one day, and I'm very confident that the anti-discrimination industry will suffer a very significant legal defeat. Now, the timeline, you left full-time service as an Army officer before all of your engagements with them on politics. So you're a decorated officer, and of your own choice, you left full-time service and went to the reserves. Yes, so essentially at the end of 2012, or midway through 2011, I left full-time service. On my own decision, remained in the reserves. Before there was any
melee
brouhaha, I'd left full-time service and transferred to reserves.
And were your Army political battles and your civilian political battles overlapping at all, time-wise?
That's a good question. Yes, I think so. So I had my appointment terminated in mid-2014, and the federal court handed down its decision in my favour at the end of 2015. So the Army terminated your reserve employment with them on unlawful grounds. Yep. You appealed. Yep. The federal court upheld your appeal. Yes. They've appealed your victory, and that's ongoing. So we're waiting for judgment in the appeal. That matter was heard in May last year. So judgment's been reserved for about 8 months now.
That must be frustrating, waiting 8 months to hear.
I'm getting used to the legal system.
Good. How recently have you had this decision from the highest court in New South Wales?
So that was handed down about 2 Fridays ago. So about 2 weeks ago, yes. A unanimous 3-0 decision in my favour.
What's next on the legal front?
Well, look, I think I'll be fighting these fights wherever I can. There's a lot to fight for and to defend. So I will be taking on the New South Wales Anti-Discrimination Board. I think it is very important that when publicly taxpayer-funded public servants breach the fundamental basics of our Constitution, they are held to account for it. And I'll be doing everything I can to make sure that happens.
What are the prospects of a social revolution, of the disarming of the weapons of the justice system that have been turned against the population?
Look, I think they're pretty good, provided we fight. And one thing I've learned is that when you fight, you can win. But if you don't if you don't fight, you're not going to win. But I do believe there are very, very solid, strong arguments that the anti-discrimination process itself breaches the implied freedom of political communication. Now, if the High Court rules, for instance, if it was brought before a High Court, rules that way, the entire anti-discrimination industry in Australia will be shut down overnight.
Now, I'm under the impression that fighting these prolonged legal battles indicates you're a very wealthy man and the rank of major must pay extraordinarily well.
Look, I'm not a wealthy man. I've got 7 children with my wife, so we've got a large family, so we're wealthy with love, but it's not easy to fight. I want to make this point. I could not have fought on my own, and I haven't fought on my own. I've had thousands and thousands of Australians support me, provide me with encouragement, assist me with their generosity. These court cases have cost me over $200,000, and probably, in all likelihood, the bill just for these 2 court cases will reach over $500,000. Just to fight for my constitutional rights.
It's a really good investment for all of those people that have gotten behind and supported you. They weren't getting behind you. Yes, they were, but much more so, they were participating in the fight. They were getting behind the fight for their freedom, for their family, for their country.
Yes.
And they're very important battles.
So
we couldn't do it without you. I'm glad you're fighting this fight. I'm glad it's not my family looking at losing their father to jail time, possibly. I know that's one of the threats that you've been faced with for the fight for our freedom. But while we couldn't do it without you, we couldn't do it without all the people that got behind you and
that's exactly right.
Legal battle.
We are an army, and every person in the army, from the general to the soldier, plays their role. And I don't mind having a fight, so I'm happy to be, I guess, out the front. But I could not do it without all the support. That is simply the case. I mean, it is not my fight; it is our fight, and many Australians want to see the fight continue, and I'm happy to do my little part in that.
That's great. Well, I wish you all success, because we need the private police force to be disarmed, and disarmed. We need them
disarmed and dismantled.
Disarmed, dismantled, demolished.
I feel a bit like the Romans with the Anti-Discrimination Board. I won't be happy until we've captured Carthage, as it were, and destroyed it and sowed salt on the ground so nothing ever grows there again.
That sounds good for freedom of speech.
Yes.